Hello and welcome to the radiotimes.com Doctor Who podcast. My name's Hugh, and this week I am joined by radiotimes.com gaming editor Rob Lean. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Hugh. I always love that you've got the TARDIS as your Zoom background. It looks lovely.
Yeah, not unfortunately, those listening don't have the benefit of knowing just how committed I am to the immersion of the Doctor Who podcast, but I have a TARDIS here, and a classic series TARDIS at that, because the BBC released that as video background very early on in lockdown 1, and I forgot to remove it. So there you go. It's been here the whole time. Anyway, this week we're also looking at something. It's a bit of a relic. No, it's not my journalism career. It is classic series monsters, the Autons. The Autons, famously the shop window dummies that come to life, which have been in the classic and the modern series. And rumour has it they're back for series 13 with Jodie Whittaker. So we're going to get to that in a minute, but first, a little potted history of the Autons. So I'm just going to run through this really quickly. Rob, you're probably not going to say much for the first few minutes of this podcast. Is that okay?
No, that is great. I would just sit here and watch you go.
Sit here and enjoy it. So the Autons were created by Robert Holmes for John Pertwee's first serial as the Third Doctor. They're the first monsters presented in colour on the series, and they're kind of, despite not having that many appearances, they're quite famous for these sort of famous shots of them walking down the street in colour, being scary, dummy types. So they're in Spearhead from Space in 1970, and then they were back in Terror of the Autons a year later, which also introduced the Master. So yeah, that's a fun fact. The Autons and the Master are quite tied together. But then we're not in it again after that. They're in these two serials, which obviously are like multiple episodes in of themselves, but they were supposed to come back years later in 1986, but that didn't happen. And then basically the Autons and Doctor Who were gone for a long time until 2005, when they returned in grand style for Rose. And I kind of, without reading this now, I hadn't really thought of it before. It's kind of appropriate that they were there. They were the first Doctor Who monster for this grand new age of colour. So it kind of works that they're the first Doctor Who monster for its grand new age of being back on TV in 45 minutes, right?
Definitely. Yeah, and I was doing a bit of light Googling just before joining the call as well. And I'd forgotten how quite many times they've kind of nodded back to them a bit since then. They've never been the proper main baddie again since then, have they?
Not since Rose, I don't think. So yeah, in Rose they turn up, obviously. For those who don't know, they are basically they're life-size plastic dummies. They're automatons, hence the Auton name, animated by the Nestene consciousness, which is an alien sort of oogly boogly sort of jelly monster, but it's massive, made of plastic, and basically, yeah, this big psychic blob animates and moves around these Autons, so who are kind of foot soldiers and can also make copies of people, as of the modern series. So they turn up in Rose. They're the kind of main villain in that one. It's a cool monster to start with because it's quite recognizable. It's again that kind of the thing Doctor Who does really well, turning the mundane and the quite British into something quite sort of sinister and scary, which is the dummies slowly coming alive, breaking their way out of the. I'm doing some actions for Rob here, breaking their way out of the shop windows on. Well, I mean, it's actually in the centre of Cardiff, and they stuck a London Underground symbol on the local shopping centre near where I grew up. But it's supposed to be London, and they break out the department store, all the glass, and they shoot poor old Clive, played by, what's his name? Who plays Clive? Do you remember Clive?
I remember Clive. I'm also blanking on the actor's name. The guy from Christmas Lights.
He's very famous. What's his name? His name is, I'm just looking it up. It was Clive Finch. He's one of the. This is Mark Benton. I was thinking of Mark Bonner, and I knew it wasn't Mark Bonner, but it's Mark Benton. So there you go. I mean, this is the kind of expertise that you all come here for. I know. So yeah, they kill poor old Clive, and then eventually the Doctor stops them with anti-plastic and so on. And then yeah, like you say, Rob, they come back. You might think that's kind of the last big time they're in the series, but they do come back in the modern series. Probably most notably the Big Bang Pandorica Open storyline, where they make a load of Romans Autons, and Rory's a Roman. He's got a little Auton hand which he can use to shoot people, and he's sort of immortal but sort of not. It's very weird. And yeah, that's kind of, I think that's the last time we see them, right? I can't think of any times after that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'd actually forgotten that Rory was an Auton for a while there. Have they brought him back recently for a Big Finish thing? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, as the last Centurion. So I guess he is probably an Auton in those. I don't know. I haven't listened to those ones. Apologies. That is our obligatory Big Finish reference for those who listen regularly. Yeah, so apologies for that. But yeah, no, I think so. The Auton thing carries on. I'm sure the Autons have turned up in other Big Finish stories as well. But the reason we're here to talk about them today is because there have been rumours kicking around since about March that the Autons are back in Series 13, which is currently filming, Jodie Whittaker's next series, and possible final series. We don't know. So we've had pretty conclusive reports of returns of things like the Sontarans and the Weeping Angels, looks like, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it looks like the Autons might also be joining the party. I don't know, Rob, just so it's not me talking the entire way through, do you want to describe the nature of this leak?
I would love to. I'd love to describe a leak.
It's
So
green.
yeah,
It's got some little bits on the top.
yeah, it's no, I'm going to stop talking. So yeah, it was posted on Reddit by a user called possible_mobile_639 2 months ago, actually. So I'm surprised we haven't seen or heard more of it. But yeah, basically what they've spotted is a red London bus parked on the side of the road, along from what looks like, a few vans and things from a filming sesh, which you often do see about in random places. But what's most interesting is on the side of the bus, you've got an advert for what looks to be a fashion company called Autons, which has a picture of a woman on it and the tagline, "See yourself with style," which and that's pretty much it. It's quite a short little clip. But yeah, the fact that literally says Autons on it seems to be quite a big clue. That's I've worked out that one, that literally the name Autons is on it, and that might mean Autons.
Yeah, that's about as far as we've gotten. The name Autons comes from Auto Plastics, which is the company that's infiltrated by the Nestenes, and well, they make the Auton shells that they kind of use in Spearhead from Space. So that's where that comes from. So it's interesting because now I'm thinking about it, I'm sort of like, obviously, look, there's a possibility that this is not a proper Doctor Who filming thing. They clearly seem, whoever was doing this seemed to be using this bus for filming. In the video, the bus is completely static and pretty abandoned. There's a bunch of filming, like trucks and stuff nearby. Someone was filming something. The bus wasn't in use. The advert and company doesn't really seem to exist, as far as I can tell. I've done a quick search. There was a beauty company called Auton a while ago, but they haven't done anything for a couple of years, and they didn't seem to have anything to do with this. So, unless they've really gone, for bus advertising over online advertising. And looking at, I'm kind of wondering, it seems fairly likely that this could be some sort of new twist on the Auton. So people have been speculating, could this be the whole thing? Like you see yourself, could this be about, Autons replacing people? There's been a hint of this in 2005. Obviously, they replaced Mickey with a kind of weird copy. And then they've done that again with Rory more recently. But it's something that hasn't been explored that much. So, could they do an invasion of the body snatchers type thing? They replace humans with these perfect plastic duplicates. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a pretty plausible Doctor Who storyline. The my guess is that Autons, the fashion company, is a bit like what was the cute little monsters that were diet pills?
Oh, what are they called? I was thinking Photocopane, but they were the little balls, weren't they? They're the adipose. The adipose.
Yes, kind of reminds me a bit of that. That it might be like some companies got this alien thing, and they're like, we're going to use this to try and make some cash. And my theory is that Autons see yourself with style. It's almost like a personal shopper type thing, where you're going to get like a copy of yourself who's going to show you some nice clothes, and but then they're going to start trying to replace people and going evil by the end of the episode.
So they could be like shop window dummies that look like you, like that's
yeah,
their sort of gimmick, which would be costly normally and like labor intensive. But in this, like maybe you look at the dummy and it turns into you, with the clothes on, so you see what you look like. I could see that working. I also wondered if, so the woman in the photo was wearing glasses. Part of me, I wondered if the see yourself thing was related to those. Because we're both glasses wearers, you might not know this listening at home, but we are. And part of me was just wondering, kind of spitballing, is it something to do with the glasses? These frames are made of plastic. A lot of lenses are as well. What if they've moved on from the whole shop window dummy thing? They're hidden in the glasses, right? And somehow they do that to take over your brain. I mean,
very good.
It's not the most well-developed Doctor Who idea, but you know what? I'll take it if they don't use it. The evil glasses.
Yeah.
Like, to be honest, it's quite like the mobile phones in what is it called, Rise of the Cybermen? Where they kind of turn into the little Cyberman antlers. I want to say antenna.
Yeah.
And make you a slave. But it could be something to do with that.
Yeah, let's not forget either the time that in Rose where the Autons controlled a wheelie bin to get to someone. So
that's true.
Being a pair of glasses wouldn't be their silliest idea yet.
No, exactly. And like there were rumors. It's kind of interesting. The idea you talked about is almost like fast fashion and things like that. And we know that this era of Doctor Who's been quite socially conscious. Like, I really thought that Praxeus in 2020, which was kind of about plastics in the ocean, was a missed opportunity for an Auton story. Like, I feel like you could have done something with that, like the Autons taking over, being able to take over parts of the ocean because of all the plastic in it. Something like that, where you kind of get to say what's bad, there's plastic, but also have an alien. Instead, it was like a sort of virus thing, which was a bit prescient in hindsight, in a different way. But I wasn't, as very old school listeners of this podcast may or may not remember, I wasn't the biggest fan of Praxeus, whereas Morgan really liked it. So there you go. Haven't got that to balance this time. But yeah, so I wonder if maybe the thing with the Autons is like, if you want to make a proper episode with Autons, what's the kind of commentary you can do there that relates to the present day? Because they're the sort of monster, I think, that invites a commentary in the way that the Daleks are, fascism, the Cybermen are kind of like, a cautionary tale. There's all these sorts of things. I feel like maybe with the Autons, you could do something about, like, I don't know, self-image, fast fashion, those sort of things. And I think your idea is actually quite a good one. The idea that, like, maybe it's not immediately about, we're going to replace you with this copy of yourself. It's like, here's a copy of yourself, and which will make the best version of you. And then eventually that goes wrong in some way, and then they can like take over your life, or they just attack you in some way, and go crazy. And that way you'd see, doubles of Yaz and of, Dan, played by John Bishop. I can't remember any names today. And they'd just be going nuts. And, that'd be quite fun. You get to see a bit of Mandip Gill being evil, which, Doctor Who loves that kind of stuff. It's quite like the Zygons, actually, I think about it, the Zygon invasion storyline, or Doctor Who's 50th anniversary, obviously. But I still think it'd be cool, and it'd be a way of, probably a bit easier to do Autons than Zygons. Like,
yeah,
I mean, slightly less costuming.
Yeah, and like anything that gets you using the same actors for more than one thing is generally quite cost effective.
Yeah, you don't have to pay them twice. Just get Mandip Gill and you in a different jacket going, kind of robotic. I'd be interested to see if it's true. If it just turns out to be some other thing, I'm going to be very disappointed. But I reckon it could be related. I mean, it doesn't seem out of the question that they'd want to bring the Autons back in this way. They're a pretty recognizable monster. I feel like they tie quite nicely into the Russell T Davies era of Doctor Who, which, the Chris Chibnall era of Doctor Who seems to have been keen to. It's quite a sort of, I don't want to say an easy monster, but it's quite an evocative one in terms of, like, you kind of get it, right? They're shop window dummies come to life. You see it, you kind of get what it is. You kind of know what a shop window dummy is. There's a few steps in between for you. It's not as weird as, like, the Kasavin, which are sort of like alien sort of blurs from another dimension who want to do something or other, and they're spies also. It's kind of like, it's a bit easier to grasp than that, I think. So I could see them wanting to do it. Equally, it could be that this wasn't Doctor Who and it's a coincidence, and it's a fake advert, and it's actually pronounced Autons or something.
Yeah, this is a French company making their first UK marketing, and we've just completely misinterpreted it.
Why is everyone talking to us about Spearhead from space? We don't know what that is. We're French. Oh dear. I don't know. I mean, what do you think of the Autons generally? Do you think you'd like to see them back?
Yeah, Joe, they're an interesting one, because I think maybe they're quite a good monster, like you say, because they're not necessarily self-explanatory, but it doesn't take too much time to explain them and to kind of set them up as a threat, nor does it take too long to, chuck some anti-plastic at them at the end.
Yeah.
And like all the different kind of rumors that me and you and you and Morgan and you and Helen and everyone have spoken about for the new series of Doctor Who, it feels like there's quite a lot of stuff going on. And so a baddie that you don't have to spend like a full half hour explaining who they are could be quite kind of time effective as well for a fun episode, whilst you're also trying to set up a million other things.
Definitely. And, in a series where it's obviously, as we know, a slightly shorter series, where you might kind of want to get to the point a bit quicker in some episodes, we know that the Sontarans are back and the Weeping Angels are back. It's kind of like whatever monsters are quite like classic and recognizable but haven't been back yet in the Jodie Whittaker era, or for longer. Sontarans Sontarans in a similar way, actually, to the Autons had kind of been around in the Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi era, but not properly. They weren't the proper like antagonists. You had Strax and a few other people knocking about. And the Autons, you have them, as Rory and in that whole storyline, but they're not a proper villain. Weeping Angels haven't been around since, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but they weren't properly around until like they were in a bit of Peter Capaldi's last couple of episodes, but they were only really in it in the Matt Smith era. So all of these are monsters that we haven't seen for a while, but are kind of like classic Doctor Who monsters that aren't just Daleks and Cybermen, which are just done. Everyone's done them. Jodie Whittaker's era has done them quite a lot. So yeah, I could see it happening. They seem like a good monster. I'm not sure who else there'd be really. Like you kind of start to, once you've done the Cybermen and the Daleks and the Master, which obviously they've done last year as well, you kind of start to run out of and the Silurians, obviously. You start to, it goes from like, the Daleks have done, a million episodes of Doctor Who. I mean, about 2 levels down when you're on the Autons, they've done like 2 episodes. But they're just really, they're like, oh, it's only monsters. Like, no, we just use the Daleks a lot.
Yeah. And it's like the Chris Chibnall era started, didn't it, with that whole series when they were like, we're not going to use any old baddies. So I feel like he's probably already used a lot of his ideas for new baddies.
Yeah.
And he's used the Daleks and the Cybermen. And it's like, now you need to get to that next tier of villains if you want to fill out a series.
They start calling on the Macra, like they start sort of going even deeper. I mean, not deep for fans. Obviously, as well, I say they've only appeared in a few stories, lots of spin-off stories, comics, books, Big Finish adaptations. A lot of these villains have a sort of half-life longer than their appearances on the show. So, it's not saying that the Autons have just vanished in the years in between. But, we're talking about the series proper, the TV show. It's been a while since they were on. And, this evidence kind of looks like they might be back. But what do you think? Fearless listeners, I assume you're pretty fearless. You seem like a brave bunch. I don't know why I called you fearless. Would you like to see the Autons back? Do you think this leak suggests the Autons are back? And what kind of story do you think they should be in? Also, let us know if there's any other monsters you'd still like to see in Series 13 or anything you wouldn't like to see in Series 13. We'll pass along your comments to the BBC in a big black bag, along with all our fan scripts for, glasses that take over your brain and things like that. You can find out more about Doctor Who on radiotimes.com. We've got loads of features, interviews, news stories and stuff about that. And you can find more editions of this podcast on YouTube or on Acast, Spotify and Apple Podcasts, places like that. We'll be back next week. Until then, I've been Hugh.
And I've been Rob.
And we may have been Auton duplicates of ourselves, but the quality is just so good, you just couldn't tell. Thanks for listening and goodbye.